One Piece story arcs ranked, or as I would like to call it.
Your opinion is wrong.
I should probably give some context. I decided to jump on the bandwagon and make a tier list for One Piece story arcs because the RuneScape video I was planning to do kind of sucked. That was a lot easier. Oh, wait, hold on. There we go. I was born in the countryside. I know what the fuck to do around the countryside. Like, closing gates. Fucking first things first. 1, this is my opinion, and my opinion is final, clearly. 2 is that this is all based off manga, not anime. I know the anime is a lot different, but I have not watched it, so there'll be obviously a lot of differences and stuff like that, and some of the names of things is going to be a lot different as well. Besides from that, this is all just going to be from the manga, the English translation available via Viz Media. And thirdly, I guess that I should explain my thought process from S to F. Essentially, C is like, I guess, where things get a little kind of dicey. But then B is good, A is good, S is obviously really great, and stuff like that. C is where things start to be indifferent. It's good, but I'm indifferent about it. D is that I feel like D is going to be the one where it's like I'm indifferent about it, but not in a good way. E is obviously there's problems for sure, and F is like, do not recommend. I guess the best way to kind of describe this is kind of like highly recommend the story arc and absolutely do not recommend. So I could take it as a kind of like a degree of recommendation. So if there's like 2 stories on S, you know, that doesn't mean that one's better than the other kind of thing. They're both highly recommended. So don't really take it too personally if there's something that's like clearly, you know, oh, you said your explanation is a C, but you gave it a B. It's just down to personal feelings and what I remember of reading it. I have not reread it since, which even though I've caught up to the latest arc, which is Wano, which we'll get to, even though at the time of recording it's not complete. I'm going to add it on anyway, just to give a few thoughts about it. But besides from that, I guess we just get going. So first things off is Romance Dawn. I give it like a C. I like it, but the thing is that it is very much like the beginning chapters. But considering that the beginning chapters of a lot of manga I've read have been like entrance exams, like for some reason like the beginning arcs of like a lot of things have been just entrance exams or like training arcs and stuff like that. I like the fact that One Piece doesn't do that. That definitely helps that it isn't just like beginner level mission. It's like, oh, this is your first assignment and it's a low grade enemy and stuff like that. It's like, nah, it's just straight into it. Literally, Luffy breaks into a marine base and tries to save someone from an execution. Obviously, there's a lot more than that, but in comparison to obviously all of this, I definitely think, oh god, does it? Okay, I literally was on about like my explanation doesn't really matter, but I don't think it's like great. I'm kind of indifferent to an extent, so yeah, I'll put it there for now. I think Romance Dawn is still pretty good, even if it's just the beginning arc. So Orange Town I think is good. Buggy's an interesting villain and character in general. He's really entertaining. The town's kind of like nameless to an extent, and the town doesn't really matter too much, but the fact that it manages to throw in that little backstory about the dog and it's like the owner's shop and stuff like that, really kind of touching. But it's one of those things that like you didn't need to be there, but it's like the fact it is there, it kind of elevates it. And I think that's when like it was very clear that One Piece was going to be like pretty interesting, was when it was able to just throw out this like minor character and make that character seem very interesting, and also make you empathize with that character from just like a small interaction, essentially. So I'd say Orange Town, pretty good. Syrup Village, I think it's alright. I don't think the characters of it, like the, you know, rich princess kind of, well, she's not a rich princess, but whatever. Like, I just don't find the whole location or anything like that to be that interesting. Plus, the thing is that, like, Orangetown is already kind of very cut and dry, kind of like seaside town. Like, the thing is that nothing differentiates Orangetown from the first town that we see in One Piece. And Syrup Village is kind of just dreary as a setting as well. That's the thing. The later arcs at least have like a better sense of setting just because they try to be as wild as possible. But yeah, Syrup Village is definitely one of those that, besides from a ramp, it's like there's barely anything to it. Even Captain Kuro is like interesting as a villain. And Usopp's introduction is, yeah, I think Syrup Village, it's alright. I'm not going to tell you it's a must-read or anything like that, but it's alright. Baratie? I believe that's it. Ugh. I didn't like it. I'm going to be honest, I did not like Baratie. This was the arc that like nearly made me drop the series in general. I don't know why, but every single time I look up like a review of this arc, they somehow, I forgot even the character's name. It's the goddamn like drum guy with like the pearl. I found out he has a pearl on his head. That battle or that villain is the lamest thing in the world. Like, it's so long and drawn out. And Don Krieg, I just don't think is an interesting villain. Just do not think Don Krieg is an interesting villain. Because the thing is that the most interesting villain is Mihawk. And that's like halfway through the arc. Don Krieg, who's clearly, he's obviously pathetic as a villain in comparison to someone like Mihawk, who's like, you know, one of the strongest swordsmen in the entire world. And then you, on top of that, you just got this fucking drum guy, and it's just kind of feels melodramatic. Like, the only two things that really set Baratie apart from the rest is the Mihawk battle and then Sanji's flashback. I just don't really care for the rest of it, and to be honest with you, I was really frustrated with it. So I guess that's why Baratie is here. I just felt frustrated reading it. I didn't really like Don Krieg as a villain. I still don't get why people really love this arc. And like, oh yeah, this is a pinnacle of like early One Piece. Like, I really don't get it. I really don't get it. Arlong Park, I'm kind of like in between like indifferent and good. I feel like it's good though. Arlong Park is the first introduction of Arlong and the Fishman. And yeah, I think as an arc, it's pretty good. I do think it takes a while to get there. I do think that Arlong is a menacing villain. And also the fact that it's, you know, it's got like a nice bit of comedy in there. It's got a nice bit of action as well. And it's these more personal arcs that are always like the more impactful. The ones where the actual like stakes are more to do with the actual Straw Hats than it is to do with like, oh, the state of the citizens on the island. Like something like something like obviously Syrup Village is obviously, you know, all of these have like something to do with like the Straw Hats kind of motives and their beliefs and stuff like that. But Arlong is the first one that was like, oh, it's not like an introductory like arc. It's like, no, this is like Nami's big emotional moment. So I think that is really what helps it, is just the fact that it's obviously it goes into Nami's character and breaks it down. It also shows that she isn't just the conniving kind of like money grubbing kind of person, and what also kind of builds her character a lot better. So I think, yeah, I do like Arlong Park. I think it's a pretty decent arc. I'm trying to remember. The thing is, I'm trying to remember the arc in general. I remember a couple of the battles. I don't remember them all, but I do definitely think it is one of the more memorable arcs. I say that is completely contradictory. I don't know. I think it's just the fact that Arlong as a villain is much better than like Don Krieg or Captain Kuro. Like, Arlong has a way better presence in general than Don Krieg. Like, it's more the pacing of Baratie. I swear to God. Loguetown? I'm kind of indifferent, to be honest with you. It's not an arc that I'm like super thrilled about, but I do think it's like, it's all right. And there's not much to say about it, so I don't really hate it. It's just there, really. Reverse Mountain, I'll put in D. I personally, it's the same as Loguetown. It's like there's not much to talk about, but as much as it is like the big introduction to the Grand Line and stuff like that, there's not much to it. That's the thing. It's just kind of, I don't know. It doesn't seem that interesting, to be honest with you, and I never felt like it was like amazing. So yeah, it's indifferent, but like at the same time, it's like I could skip it. Whisky Peak. I really like Whisky Peak. I think this is really good. This is, in terms of like all the arcs, this is the arc that really got me to be like, oh shit, okay, I get it now. I get it. Like after Baratie, I was like, I don't know about this one. Chief. Arlong saved it a little bit, like a fair amount, but Baratie really put me off the series. Whisky Peak put me back. Like the fact that like obviously it's like the Grand Line, it builds it up for like 100 chapters. You go into the Grand Line and then you just see this town full of like cactuses and stuff like that, and it's this desert sort of like cowboy town, and immediately they're attacked by Baroque works. And Zorro, the whole sequence with Zorro is like fantastic. It's one of those arcs that is just like, oh, it's just so good as an arc. It's the thing is that it sets up obviously the Arabasta saga in general really well. It's such a strong start, and I really enjoyed Whisky Peak. I think as well is just the I don't really remember much of the characters or anything like that. The guy who flicks his bloody nose pickings and stuff like that, like that battle is like, it's all right, but it's more like the Zorro versus Luffy battle that happens halfway through where, and also Luffy just walking around with his like gut, like basically ready to explode. I think that like that whole arc I think is really good in general. I really enjoyed it. Little Garden, I say the same for Little Garden. Little Garden's pretty good as well. Maybe siding with B more than anything. Like it's good, but I don't think it's like great. And then like amazing at S. But like I do think Little Garden's pretty good with the giants and like, you know, the giant dinosaur bones and stuff like that. Also the battle that happens between Mr. God, I can't remember the name, the wax dude. The thing is, I can't remember all their names in general, but I do think I definitely enjoyed it. I do think that the also the kind of brotherly bond that the two giants have, I think is also really well put together. Definitely think it's up here near B. Drum Island. I'm kind of indifferent. I do think it's good. I don't think it's bad. The thing is what I remember the most about these arcs is more the villain and the locations rather than like the details of it. But the thing is, Wappo, I think is just kind of, he's just there. He doesn't really pose a threat. Like at the start of the arc, he literally gets knocked off the boat and then sent flying. And then the next thing he knows, he's like, I'm going to invade the island again. And then, you know, Luffy beats his ass. And the battle itself is also really kind of uneventful as well. It's more to do with like Chopper and his backstory and stuff like that. And that's, yeah, it's one of the more tragic ones. But I think Drum Island's more memorable because of the initial kind of climb up to the mountain, to the top of the castle to get, forgot her name, but the doctor essentially. I think that's where it's the most memorable, and also the fact that it's also the arc that introduces Chopper. So I don't think it's a bad arc. I think it's just there. Arabasta is definitely an A. Arabasta is probably it's probably up there for sure. I think it's a bit long, maybe in some areas, but I definitely think the back and forth nature of it is still really good. And also the final confrontation's obviously a classic. Obviously, besides from a couple of problems and stuff like that are like glaring flaws, just because we get to know Vivi a lot more, that it kind of grounds Arabasta a lot better than someone like Dressrosa, which we'll get to. If it wasn't for the fact that we obviously spend so long basically with Vivi, I don't think Arabasta would have the same effect. I think that's the kind of the big problem with like Skypiea, which we'll get to now. But the fact that we build up Crocodile is this big villain that like is feared amongst the sea and stuff like that. That I think really helps it. But someone like Enel doesn't really have that. And it's the same with some of these other arcs. They just don't build up the villain at all. And it's kind of where One Piece does most of its storytelling, is in the battles and stuff like that. So when the villains are not built up in any sort of way, they kind of fall flat as arcs. It's also where the most major character development happens. Like, if it wasn't for the fact that like Luffy grabbed the flag, you know, the pirate flag on top of the Drum Island's castle, you know, Chopper wouldn't join. The fact that Luffy goes to battle Arlong to save, obviously, Nami's family or Nami's town and stuff like that. Like, yeah, that's basically where, like, One Piece gets its most, like, character development and where it really shows, like, its most emotional moments. So when the villain doesn't build up to that, it falls flat, and Arabasta definitely helps. It definitely does this much better because it's able to actually build that character of Crocodile up a lot. And also the fact that Crocodile's kind of a cool villain in general, as well as also the supporting cast is also pretty good as well. So yeah, I'd say Arabasta, definitely a classic. Can't really go wrong with Arabasta. Up next, Jaya. Jaya's indifferent. I don't want to put it in B. I do think it's good. I just don't want to put it in B. I think it's too short, and it's actually, I think it's good. I think it's good. I'm not indifferent about it. I think it's still good. It's the more I think about it, the more I'm like, yeah, it's a pretty good setup. It sets up the whole idea of the Sky Islands and stuff like that, and that whole, you know, next stage essentially. Like, once you get past Arabasta, it's like, okay, where do you go from here? The sky. And that's such a good setup. The fact that it's able to even go from like something as epic as Arabasta and this big ass battle to them being like, I want to go to a sky island is fucking genius, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think it's a good start to the Skypiea, the Skypiea kind of like saga in general. For the most part, I still think it's good. I definitely think it sets up Skypiea pretty well. I had his name on the tip of my tongue earlier, and I can't remember his name now. But yeah, basically that battle in general is also a classic. The fact that he's able to one-shot Springman over there, you know, I think it's a classic moment in general. The fact that they realize, oh shit, he's actually this character and stuff like that. And it also comes back. That's a weird thing. Somehow Jaya comes back around to Dressrosa, which is a hell of a lot. Like, think about the amount of chapters in between those two. It's ridiculous. But the fact that it's able to make that callback is amazing in itself. So yeah, I do like Jaya. I think Jaya's pretty good. Skypiea. Yeah, no, I think it's F. No, it's not F, E. I think it's problematic. It's way too long. It drags itself out so much. This is where I think the whole, like, no one dies in One Piece rule really suffers the most. Like, the thing is that you get from, obviously, Pell surviving was really dumb, but Skypiea would be better if there was an actual consequence. And that's the biggest problem, is that, for one, when you have your main villain literally say, there's 54 people, like, going into this battle, and only 5 of them are going to survive, and then all of the, like, literally all 54 survive, it's like, calm the hell on. Like, that is not on. It just takes all the dramatic tension out of the entire arc. And I know it's meant to be the end of the arc, but it just, I mean, literally, Skypiea had fucking lightning and thunder raining down, and it was like, oh no, the Sky Island's gonna fall, the whole island's doomed and stuff like that, and then nothing happens. It literally, everyone stands up, like, you know, Enel literally electrocutes someone to practically to death, and then she just gets back up. And then it's like, oh, literally, there was no consequence for Luffy failing to kill Enel the first time or anything like that. There's no big repercussion. It's just, Enel's about to do Thunder Strike. Oh, he's dead. Or he's knocked out. Yay, save the day. And it's literally just like that. Also, the big flashback that happens in Skypiea is one of the worst. It just takes all the momentum that the story had up to that point and just completely knocks it aside. And it just literally, it's one of those things that you just kind of like think to yourself, like, what is the point? Like, it's not even like that complex of a story. The flashback itself is literally like a guy goes to an island, makes a friend, and then leaves. Like, it didn't need a big, like, kind of flashback that takes like 8 chapters or so, or like even longer to really explain. And yet for some reason, they go into so much depth about it that I kind of just sat there and I was like, why is this important? And it's not. In the grand scheme of things, it really is not. It's nice to know, but it means absolutely nothing to the actual plot that's happening at the time. It's just more like explanation for things, and that's kind of the big problem with it. Long ring, long land. I'm indifferent. I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it's great. I do understand, though, that the anime version of this was... Like, it's just, yeah, the anime version of this was apparently pretty bad, but I don't think it's that bad. I obviously, I know the amount of molding people are going to do from just seeing Long Ring, Long Land over Baratie, but I mean, like, it didn't offend me. It's kind of just, like, filler, if anything. And I think it's the fact that it's funny as well. I think it doesn't offend me as much because it's like, it's, you know, humorous. And also the fact that you get from Skypiea to Long Ring, Long Land. That's a fucking awful name. The fact that you just go from this like epic conclusion to something a little bit lighter kind of helps. It doesn't have as much like, well, the stakes are still high. It's more emotional stakes. So when Chopper obviously gets like, you know, turned over towards the Foxy crew, I do think that's a pretty big moment. It kind of hits a little bit like, oh crap, the crew's breaking apart because this guy's stealing crew members. It has tension. It has tension, but the problem is that it is just too much filler. It's too fillerish. I still like it. I still think it's good, but I don't think I could add it above. I don't think I could add it into the B. Oh no. I don't think I could put it to B, just because it is too fillerish. As much as I do, you know, fuck it. We deal with it later. What a 7? I think it's a bit too just like, I don't feel much when I read Water 7. Guessing because of the picture that the train arc is in it. Actually, the train arc rating is up. I just realized if it does include the train arc, then yeah, it goes a little bit up, because the train is definitely the best part of that arc. I do think it takes its while to get there, but it at least builds up the villains in a fair, decent way. And also builds up the whole conflict with, you know, the Going Merry, the Merry Go, basically on its last legs. And I think that's a kind of like a big, you know, emotional moment, especially when Usopp leaves the crew. That's a huge moment as well. Yeah, I just think it takes too long to get to the real meat and potatoes of like the Enies Lobby saga. I think it just takes way too long, and I think, like, I don't think it's really good. I think it's good. It's just the fact that I think the whole part where like Zoro and like Luffy are like stuck and like the tide's coming in, I think that part's like, you can do without it. And then obviously they get on the train and try to chase after, and obviously Sanji is stuck on the the opposing train. I think that's a good moment. I think that whole the train section of Water 7 is pretty good. It's just the rest is just kind of bleh. I think it just takes way too long to get to the major key moments, and even when it does, I'm not really that interested. Like, I don't think what's happening with Frankie and stuff like that is really as interesting as it should be. It is interesting, but I don't think it's as interesting as it should be, and that I think kind of brings it down a little. It may be why I don't really care for it too much. As much as Frankie is a good character, I think he's cool, but Frankie is not my favorite member of the Straw Hats. But Enies Lobby, we got our first S. Enies Lobby, like, the fact, you know, it's going to be good when the first thing that Luffy does is just charge in over the gate, and just completely launches himself straight into the middle of the marine base. And it's basically, it's just a roller coaster completely. And I think it's just non-stop action. It's non-stop stakes. And it's also got like a huge emotional drive to it, because even though Robin we haven't been with for that long, it's a big emotional moment in general. And also the fact that it's just built with just these big hard-hitting moments. That's a big thing about it. It's just like it's one hard-hitting moment after another. And it also plays back to like with what's happening with Usopp and the Soka King. You just have like just battle after battle, and it's just, yeah, it's just too good. It's a really non-stop action kind of a saga in general. I really do think Enies Lobby is up there with one of the greats, like in terms of like arcs. It's just non-stop action. It's got an emotional drive that's really effing good. It's punchy. It's really punchy. Return to Water 7 I think is okay. It's more just like a setup for what's going to happen at the Paramount War, like especially with like Ace versus Blackbeard and stuff like that, which I forgot was even in this arc until I read the summary one more time. It's kind of just an info dump, and it's kind of just a, you know, bridging point more than anything, in an epilogue. I think it's fine. Thriller Bark, I'm indifferent. Thriller Bark I think is good. It's just not great, and I think it's just not something that I really remember, to be quite honest with you. It's kind of forgettable. If anything, there's a few, I definitely remember it better than, like, I remember this way more than obviously Arlong Park, just because Arlong Park is, like, a lot of this stuff is way back when I was just, like, starting off. You know, the final, like, battle to get your soul back kind of thing at the end is pretty good, in my opinion. And also the surprise entrance of Kuma onto the island, I think definitely brings the ending of it up a lot. It's just more the fact that the rest of the arc is just there. It's got some good moments, but I think in general, it's just, I think actually maybe it's a B. Like, the more I think about it, the more I think of like the oars battles and stuff like that. I think maybe it's a B. I think it's good. I'm not indifferent about it. Sabaody Archipelago. I feel indifferent. That's weird to say, but I feel indifferent. I don't, as much as the ending of this arc is really good, the rest of it takes a while. It's a slow burn, and it takes a while to get there, just because you know you have what's happening with Deville, which is pretty funny. But then you obviously go to Sabaody, and it takes its time to really build up to the climax of it. So I don't think it's bad. It's just, to get to the emotional core of like Sabaody, it takes a while, and I think it's a lot of setup, and thus I kind of feel indifferent about it. Obviously the big emotional moment at the end really does round it out, but like it takes a while to get there. Sabaody is fine. I just don't feel great about it. Amazon Lily is the same. It's kind of there. And also the fact that the whole, like, I'm just not that big of a fan of the Amazons. The fan base in general has this upset, like, I think it's also due to the anime in general, but Boa Hancock is hugely popular, and I personally, I just don't find it to be that interesting. It's the same with most of the Amazons in general. So yeah, sure, it's an arc, but it's more the bridge than anything. I think these two are more setup and bridges than anything, so that's why it goes there. But Impel Down, though, Impel Down slaps. Impel Down is basically one big prison break, and honestly, it's also got one of the dumbest villains in the world. That is literally his introduction, is that he's introduced that he just sits there and shits for about 20 hours a day or something stupid like that. I think it's just fucking hilarious. Just the fact that they bring up the fact that he's so toxic and so poisonous that he literally spends the majority of the day crapping is just hilarious. But I think Impel Down is just such a good arc. It rounds out, basically, it brings back Crocodile, which is amazing in itself, but it also brings back Buggy, brings back, like, obviously the Baroque works, like Mr. 2 and Mr. 1, and Mr. 3, I think, as well. It brings them all back. It then also adds, like, Jinbei into the mix and as well. And I think it's just really good. I really like Impel Down. I think it's the thing is that it's that whole idea of just being stuck behind enemy lines, and it also has like a great kind of I guess like emotional like edge to it as well, just because it's like the race to get ace. That rhymed. But yeah, like I said, I think Impel Down is pretty good. So after that, we got Paramount War, and Paramount War is up there. Especially, I think in general, if I was going to put an SS, Paramount War is up there. Paramount War is just, it's a combination of like 500 chapters all together, and it just slaps. Like, very exhausting arc to read, because every single chapter is just so brimmed and jam-packed with like stuff going on that I think it can get a bit overwhelming, and a lot of the fights don't really have conclusions and stuff like that. But yeah, Paramount War in general, I think is just, it's like, in terms of war arcs that I've seen, it's the one that I think has really stood out in my mind. It just brings so many different characters, so many different things together, and just, conclusion, it also hits home as well. Like, it's a really strong arc. It's a really strong arc. And it's definitely like pinnacle of like One Piece in general. Post-war though, I think it's fine. Post-war is just, obviously after what happened with the Paramount War, you gotta calm that shit down. And as much as like post-war does set up what happens later on, especially with Sabo and stuff like that, yeah, it's just there. The thing is that in combination with the Paramount War, yeah, it definitely helps, but I'm not gonna sit, but in isolation on its own, I'm not gonna reread it. Like, I don't think this arc is something that I would want to reread. Paramount War, I think or the post-Paramount War, I think is fine. It's desperately needed, especially after that. Then we have the Return to Sabaody, which is also kind of the same. It's just a bridge arc, if anything. It's just like, oh shit, One Piece is back, and then it's slowly introducing all the characters back and stuff like that, as well as also just the what is the characters look like in their outfits and what they're like now and stuff like that. And I think it's fine. It's just, it's nothing amazing, so it is what it is. Fishman Island, though, I think is problematic. Do not think Fishman Island is that good. Definitely suffers from the fact that the villain is not that compelling, as much as I do think Hoity is kind of misunderstood. I mean, for one, also the fact that, like, we just seen Luffy, like, come back from, obviously, training for 2 years, beating several Kumas and stuff like that, which are, like, the old Pacificers and stuff like that. And then on top of that, it's like Hoity is just Arlong, but drugs. That's the biggest problem. It's like this villain that we basically beaten like all the way back in like the first 100 chapters. It comes back basically, but he's now on drugs. Hoity is just, lame in that sense. And also the side villain is, I forgot his name, but the fact it's just a lot of yikes in that sense. It's just such a lame villain that he's just so obsessed with a princess, and it's no. Yeah, I think, and also the fact that a lot of the fishmen in general are so bland. Holy crap. As for people that are fucking fish, they're so bland. Like, the prince, I think, like the fucking prince, he's the blandest looking motherfucker on the planet. And a lot of the fishmen are basically so bland it hurts. So, yeah, personally for me, Fishman Island is more of a showcase of, like, One Piece and, like, the new character designs and what's happened, and bridging that into, obviously, the new world, than it is really an arc on itself or a saga. I think it's just, not that great. Punk Hazard, I think it's fine. Personally for me, I'm not really a massive fan of well, does it go into D? I don't think it's bad. That's the thing. Like, the thing is once you get to D, I think it's bad. Even then, it's like Reverse Mountain's not even that bad. I don't think Reverse Mountain's actually that bad. In retrospect, I don't think it's that bad. But Punk Hazard, no, I think it's that way. I think it's, but I think actually maybe. Hold on, let's think about this. Reverse Mountain, I think is, Drum Island, I think is Sabaody, I think, has problems. Emerson Lily, Return to Thing, and Punk Hazard, I think, is like the indifferent but like kind of way. I'm changing up the rules as I go along. I've been recording for 50 minutes. Come on. Punk Hazard, I think, just It suffers from a villain that's also, like, the thing is that up to this point, I think Fishman Island and also Punk Hazard have two just kind of not very good villains. And I think this is the big problem with the first, like, the early stretches of, like, One Piece is this, even, like, Don Flamingo to an extent. Don Flamingo, even though he's, like, still ridiculously powerful, I think the biggest problem, though, is that up to this point, we kind of expect Luffy to be able to do, like, be able to be an emperor, like, single-handedly. And I think that's what makes Punk Hazard also kind of not really have that much tension to it. Also, is kind of forgettable as like a arc in general. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, I don't know, I can't remember that much. I remember this giant children. I don't know what happened to the giant children even. I think, no, they got Smoker. Yeah, Smoker's in it. Yeah, so the body swap thing is kind of like, yeah, it's okay, but it's not like, it kind of overstays its welcome. Yeah, it's just one of the, maybe it is a D. It is just one of those arcs that it's just like, if I had to go back and read it, I'd be like, ugh, okay, sure, here we go. You know, it's not like something I'm really going to go back and enjoy and really want to reread. These, I think, are fine to reread. It's just these, I think, are a little bit like, do I have to reread it? Actually, Drum Island, I would actually reread. Right, I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to adjust it at the end. Dressrosa, I think it's good, but it's like problematic. I think Dressrosa is just Arabasta, but just too bloated. And I think that's what really kind of puts it down, because there's so many good moments. There's really good moments in Dressrosa, but it's just, I think it's a C, but I think it's just too bloated. It's got a big flaw in that it's too long, it's too bloated, and kind of boring at parts. But the flashback scenes, I think, or Rebecca's flashback scene can go, but Law's flashback scene, I think, is pretty good. The the Coliseum, I think, is it's pretty decent. I don't mind it. Yeah, I think it's a D. It's just too problematic. It's just too kind of long-winded and kind of boring to really put it anywhere like above a C. Even though I still think it's good, I just don't. It's just my gut says, or my mind says, it's just. I mean, it takes like you have that whole Coliseum part at the beginning, which is particularly long, and then after that you also have the battle to, you know, free the toys, and then you have that huge battle at the end, which takes like it's also stalled out because the fucking birdcage thing takes so long to get around because Luffy has to literally wait 10 minutes, which is pretty lame as a problem. It extends the story out ridiculously long just to get that extra battle out, instead of it being like Luffy's like injured or anything like that. It's just like this arbitrary limit that he's like, oh, he's gone over the limit, he's got to wait 10 minutes, and it's just kind of like that drags things out a way longer. And the thing is that there's not much going on in between that. Yeah, it's kind of there. So I think it's fine. I don't think it's bad, I just think it's fine. I don't really remember Zoe, to be honest with you. I think it's just fine, personally. It's an interesting concept, though, the whole elephant island thing. I definitely think it's one of the more fantastical areas that we've seen, but like in general, it's just kind of like the whole tension of it is like, oh, you know, the samurais are allowed on the island and stuff like that, and it's just kind of like, as much as that is like long, I don't think it's that interesting, in my opinion. As much as it's a plot twist that like the Zoans are actually thankful that the samurai are there, I just don't think it's that interesting. Whole Cake, though, is an S. Actually, it's an A. I think the final conflict is way too long, but I really do like Whole Cake Island. I might put it in S. When I think about Whole Cake Island, I really enjoyed Whole Cake Island. For one, it's got a great emotional core to it with Sanji. I think that's the kind of the big problem with a lot of the arcs up to that point, like our post time skip, is just the fact that like none of the villains pose a threat. Don Flamingo does, but it's not in the same way. Like the thing is, as soon as Gear 4 comes out and you kind of realize, oh, Luffy's got this in the bag, it's kind of just over. But with Whole Cake Island, it's like it's clear that like everything on this island is way stronger than Luffy. Don Flamingo levels are brutal, but everyone is a Don Flamingo, and that's what makes Whole Cake Island has way more tension. It's that you're really deep behind enemy lines, feeling that you just don't know what's going to happen. I think that's what really brings it up. Also, the fact that the battle with Katakuri is also pretty amazing in itself. I do like it. I do really like it. I do think the last stretch of the arc is kind of there. As the last major arc before we get to Wano, I think Whole Cake Island is really good. It's a fun concept, like the whole, like, everyone's food related in some way, you know. I think it's a fun island. Levely's it's fine. I think it's fine. It's more of an info dump than anything, so I can't really say much after that. It's also kind of like, oh, look, we got all these memorable characters and of obviously the previous journeys and stuff like that. As much as Rebecca and Viola are they're there, I think it's going to be more interesting to see what happens after Wano, because obviously there's definitely been things that have been going on at Levely that we don't know about yet. We have to wait and see where this goes, really. But at the moment, it's a C. And then Wano, I think, is an A at the moment. I do think it's pretty good. It's not, like, amazing, but I think it's pretty good. Even though it's longer than Dressrosa, it's less bloated. It's way less bloated and it feels way more focused. And I think that's because it breaks it up with acts instead of just Dressrosa's just everything is done in a day kind of thing. Like, it literally, the whole of Dressrosa takes place in one day. That is insane in itself. And whereas Wano is this big kind of, it feels like better pace because it takes place over multiple days instead of it just being like, we gotta beat Don Flamingo in a day, otherwise the birdcage. But I think that's it, really. I don't think, I'm trying to look back. The thing is, I don't think Reverse Mountain is that bad. It's just uninteresting. But I think that's fine. The same with Sabaody. I think it's not uninteresting. It's just uninteresting. Actually, because it's uninteresting, I'll put it in D. I think that's really it. I'm trying to think if there's any changes I can make, but honestly, I think this is it. I think, yeah, obviously there's going to be some, like, picks here that are going to get some people riled up. The Baratie is the one that I'm fucking dreading to see what people think of that. I think it's a decent list. I do think that obviously putting Enies Lobby and Impel Down at the top, and is along with the Paramount War, is a bit of a like, oh no shit. Yeah, I think a lot of One Piece is really good, all things considered. If you had to condense the best of the best to someone, is just like introduce them via the Arabasta saga and then go from there. But I definitely do need to like reread sections, especially because Baratie, I do not, but like, am I missing something here? I feel like I'm missing something major with Baratie, but I really didn't think it was that good. But besides from that, I think this is a pretty good list. But I think that's going to be it. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please do subscribe, follow at orkward.xp or experience on Twitter or something like that. I need to get a bit more eloquent way of saying that. But yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Hopefully I'll be probably doing something that isn't a tier list. This was just literally because I couldn't think of anything to do. But yeah, I'm glad you stayed around all the way to the end. So, toodles. I am not saying I need to. I'm not finishing a video with toodles. Oh lord. Bye. Oh lord. Well, this is fun.